Okay, so we just read Snow White and the Widow Queen by Jonathan Pageau. Do you want to give a quick summary?
Yeah, I'll try. It was a lot more complex
Yeah,
than the movie.
yeah. Oh, was it? I don't
Uh,
remember the movie or even if I've seen it.
yeah, the movie was very much simplified.
Really, even though it took
Yeah,
much longer maybe to read. Yeah.
yeah, it was a nice movie though, but yeah. So yeah, in this version of the story, there's a king and queen, and the queen is infertile, and she's been wanting a child for years. And then one day a crow kind of gives her a sign that she will have a child, and she gets ready and becomes pregnant. But the cost for that was her death. So she gives birth to Snow White, and um, yeah, she was very beautiful. The queen knew she was going to be beautiful too. With what's it called? Skin white as snow, uh,
And yeah, she had pricked
lips
her
red as
finger
blood.
when she had realized that she would be pregnant when the crow came
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
the blood fell on the snow.
Mhm. Yeah, after her passing, the servants raised Snow White, and the king remarried to another queen. Um, and that queen, she was very beautiful as well. And one day the king got her a mirror that would reassure her all the time that she was the most beautiful. But as Snow White grew up, she was kind of uh, I think she was, I don't know, at that point she was kind of threatened. Um,
I think she was.
yeah, yeah. So
People started
yeah, that's
whispering anyway at some point.
yeah. So people started talking, and then like the king just wasn't involved in raising her anymore, and he just let the servants do it.
Or
Since like
or yeah, or running the kingdom. He was just kind of
yeah,
despondent after the death of her mother.
yeah. And then eventually, the king is found dead with an arrow in his heart, I think in the forest. And it's kind of implied in the illustrations that the queen got the huntsman to do it. Um, so yeah, once he's dead, she turns Snow White into a servant, and one day a prince comes from a kingdom, from another kingdom, and he came after hearing rumors of Snow White, or just like a very beautiful woman in that kingdom. So the queen assumes that it's her. So the prince has dinner with her, and he notices Snow White outside in the garden. So yeah, he excuses himself from the queen and is very taken by Snow White's beauty. So then the queen gets really enraged and jealous. So she sends the huntsman to kill Snow White by by leading her into the forest. But then the huntsman isn't able to do it because, yeah, he's just, I guess, not that bad of a person. Like he feels uh, conflicted with it. So he just tells Snow White to go far into the forest and never come back. Eh,
And even when he's gonna go kill her, he gets upset by his, feelings or the situation or whatever, and she
mhm,
tries to console him.
mhm. Yeah, like she runs into the forest and comes upon a house owned by the seven dwarfs. And after finding her sleeping on one of the beds, they too are taken by her beauty and they decide to let her stay. And she just helps around the house. And um, yeah, she spends most of her time there. Um, but then the queen eventually finds out that the huntsman didn't kill Snow White because she consults with the mirror again to like reassure herself of her beauty. And the mirror responds that Snow White is the most beautiful and that she's in the forest with the dwarfs. So she puts the huntsman to death, and then she creates a magic spell, I think with the belt, of a poison belt, and she disguises herself as I think a gypsy wanderer or something, and she goes into the forest and uh, persuades Snow White to take the belt as an offering to her beauty. So once she touches the belt or has it around her waist, there's a poison on the belt that is puts her to sleep. Um, and then the dwarves find her later in the evening and they take the belt off, which saves her. And they tell her to not trust anyone from the outside and to not let them in the house anymore. So then the queen comes back a second time once the mirror once again says she's still Snow White is the most beautiful. So she tries to kill her a second time by disguising herself as I think forgot what kind
Oh,
of
a
person
thief.
she, the thief. And this time the thief has a poisoned hairpin, and Snow White recognizes the hairpin as belonging to her mother, the former queen. So she gets very emotional, and uh, even though she doesn't let the thief inside, she lets the thief put it on her from the window, and that pricks her scalp and puts her to sleep again. But again, the dwarves find her and save her. Um, and then, yeah, they give her the same advice to just not trust anyone from outside or let them in. So once again, the third time, the queen finds out from the mirror again that Snow White is the most beautiful, so she's still alive. And over the time, the queen has been aging a bit, kind of getting grays in her hair or like losing nails and things like that, or getting wrinkles.
Well,
Uh,
I think she's artificially aging because she's giving up each time a more precious part of herself. It's like the
mhm,
first part, she kind of loses some of her hair and nails. The second time,
mhm.
with giving her blood, she loses more or something.
Yeah. So then by this third time, she's very gray and there's even more wrinkles and she just looks like an old woman now. But she's still determined to kill her, so she makes a spell with like a poisoned apple, and she disguises herself as an like an old hag and goes down the forest. And this time, she meets Snow White outside after feigning a fall. Because like Snow White's very kind, so she helps her up and takes her under a tree to rest, and she gives Snow White an apple as a reward. And she kind of persuades Snow White to take the apple. Forgot what the apple did, but I guess it gave her knowledge of beauty and or something like that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
what she said it would do.
yeah,
It would be like the mirror, and it is very
yeah,
shiny surfaced.
yeah. And Snow White was persuaded because she hoped it would help her connect with the prince again. And throughout the story, the prince had been searching for her since after meeting her in the castle. So he had been spending time searching for Snow White. Um, so yeah, Snow White bites into the apple, and this time it kills her instantly. And uh, yeah, the queen feels she succeeded, so she leaves, and the dwarves find her, and they make a glass coffin for her, and they're in grief for like it. The grief never really seems to lessen or anything.
Even
Um,
after 40 days.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, in those 40 days, the prince is still looking for Snow White and he finds her coffin in the forest and he gets the permission from the dwarves to give her a kiss, and that kiss wakes up Snow White.
And by the way, before when he had met her and they had sort of introduced each other, maybe sort of started to fall in love, he had tried to steal a kiss and she had said, wait until what did she say? Love
Wait
waits
until
until.
true love, wait until true love, uh, kind of awakens or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Something along
Do
those
not
lines.
awaken love until it's time or something like that.
Yeah.
And so now he remembers, and this seems like the right time to awaken love and
Mhm.
awaken her and all that stuff.
Yeah. And they go back to her kingdom, and the queen had disappeared 40 days prior, oddly, which maybe that was the price, I guess, for her to kill Snow White. Um, so yeah, they come back to the kingdom, and she be, reclaims her nobility and becomes queen and has
Yeah.
children.
Yeah, everybody rejoices.
Mhm.
Yeah, the kingdom is alive again. It's not doesn't have the vain widow queen as its ruler with the hunters roaming around killing all the animals.
Mhm.
All the hunters that the from the queen's land.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and
Oh,
then
and what about the last part? Yeah.
oh yeah, so she meets the queen. Guess in those 40 days she disappeared and kind of continued living like it's an old hag. And she keeps going up to the castle walls trying to get back into her kingdom, but the guardsmen turn her away because they don't believe anything she's saying and just think she's crazy. And but eventually she breaks into the castle and gets put in a dungeon. And Snow White, now the queen, recognizes who it might be. So she goes to the dungeon and recognizes the former queen. So, like in an act of compassion, she just lets the queen go. And the queen, she goes out into the forest and lives in the now abandoned house that the dwarves left. Um, and yes,
And
that's,
she, and she still lives there to this
yeah,
day.
yeah. Oh yeah, and the dwarves became honest people. So they went from thieves to just working men since they felt kind of ashamed after Snow White asked them if they had ever, if they would ever be willing to hurt, think hurt people or something like that
Yeah.
at, at some point in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the at least the second time she shames someone from doing something bad by, by kindly sort of admonishing or just giving a good example of sort of beauty, purity, goodness. Yeah. Beauty, goodness, purity, life, love, all in one person and our relationships with others. So what did you think?
I really like the story. Yeah, I think
Yeah, me too.
maybe the favorite version I've heard, just because there's a lot more to it.
I didn't know the Disney movie. You're talking about the Disney movie from like 70
Yeah,
years ago or something, had a
yeah,
lot less in it.
yeah. Well, it was still a good movie, and I guess they couldn't put that all in a movie. Um, but
Were they
yeah,
never, the dwarves never thieves?
no, they were always just honest working dwarfs.
They weren't as complex.
Yeah,
They didn't have their own transformation.
yeah.
What do you remember anything else that's different? The
Uh, I think I think there was never any background on the queen mother, kind
Oh,
of
okay.
dying to give birth to her as the
I
price.
see. How did they explain Snow White's name and her look and everything?
I don't remember, but I don't remember like the king or queen being like, uh, it was a long time ago, but yeah, I don't remember too much, but just that it wasn't as, it was kind of simplified.
Yeah, it was a good story. Yeah, I mean, she sort of plays the role of beauty and goodness, of always inspiring the best in people, except for someone who is inherently sort of evil or ma- ill-intentioned or competitive, you know. And that comes to a head in their confrontation where and the widow queen tries to tell her that beauty is a weapon, and Snow White, usually she's not confrontational, but this time she directly disagrees and says beauty is not a weapon.
Yeah, and just gradually over the story, like the queen's interior kind of comes out physically too. To kind of diminish whatever beauty she had.
Yeah, yeah, she was very beautiful. She was like the most beautiful, and then when Snow White came of age, she was like probably the second most beautiful, but
Mm.
that's not good enough. And yeah, she's willing to sacrifice that beauty so that the other one will not win,
Mm.
you know. Yeah, that mirror always tells the truth. It had been a great sacrifice of the king. It also mentions that he gave her lots of ornaments and things when he was alive. Basically, he took from the kingdom to provide her with the sort of implements of her vanity,
Mm.
including the mirror, which always tells the truth. So the mirror is about truth about beauty. And she, and one thing is that every between her sort of hurting Snow White or making her fall asleep every time the Widow Queen sort of stays away from Mirror for a while, but eventually cannot resist the temptation to go back to it. But yes, this kind of torturous kind of thing for her, you know, this kind of, and that's kind of how truth can be, or truth about something that we don't want to face,
Mm.
about that we're not the best, or that maybe the point isn't to be the best or not to be competitive or something like that, or certain kinds of truths aren't as important. You know, competitive truths aren't as important as other kinds of truth.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe just, you know, truth that things change and that they're not permanent. Um, and
Yeah.
she just couldn't face that and wanted to stay rigidly like in the same spot forever. And that's not how life is.
Yeah. Yeah. She wanted to be the ruler, or at least admired. Yeah. Above all. And yeah, and since she can't face the fact that beauty fades, she accelerated that fact. Yeah, and in the end, yeah, she lost everything, her position, her love, although she lost that early on with the king. Uh, her whatever companionship she had with the head hunter, and the other hunters. Yeah, and her position, her even her health and her sanity, her freedom, she's put in the dungeon. Of course, she's never free. She's a tyrant, and she's a slave to vanity.
Yeah, I kind of thought of Snow White's mom, and she was also kind of the opposite of her. Like she knew like that by getting what she wanted, something was going to change and that there
Yeah,
would be a cost to that. And she kind of
yeah,
faced it gracefully. in
Yeah,
the
that's
end.
right. Yeah. And also, she wanted to get something that would bring life to others, which is what Snow White also does. So, I mean, the her mother sacrificed her own life to bring a new life in accordance with nature. Whereas, yeah, the Widow Queen sacrifices her own life just to cause misery and without any promise or intention to yeah, bring life or love or
Mm.
anything about life to everyone else, you know. She's ultimately selfish and Snow White is ultimately giving, you know. Snow White is giving of compassion and even to like the Widow Queen when she's an old hag. Uh, uh, that's how she draws Snow White out, actually, of the house, even though it's the third time and she's been become wary, supposedly, by like falling on the ground and pretending to have to be hurt. That's how she gets Snow White out of the house, I think. Snow White shows compassion to the hunter. Snow White is a servant, so she's serving others, cleaning for other people. She serves the dwarves and she serves the kingdom by being a good, monarch and having children. So yeah, Snow White is always selfless, and the Widow Queen is always selfish. Yeah, and you have the contrast of the two houses. The king, the castle that's kind of adult responsibility, and the childlike dwarf house, which is where I don't know. Yeah, it's like a child's dwelling, and that's ultimately where the queen ends
Okay.
up. And the dwarves sort of graduate from living there after they've graduated from living sort of selfishly and then to becoming workers and then they become sort of the most useful with the craftsmen and guards to the castle rather than living away by themselves, you know.
Didn't think of that, the child aspect of that, how it
Yeah.
fits. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good point.
Yeah, I think that's that's why they're dwarves too. That makes it they're more childlike, but then they become more mature. And we should mention that they're sort of pushed to be that way because of the sort of degraded state of the kingdom after the king sort of abdicates his responsibility and then die and is killed, and the queen takes over. It's like the hunters roam and they're killing all the wildlife, and I think everybody becomes sort of a worse version of themselves, probably, including those dwarves who sort of just live as parasites rather than to produce or to serve, which they end up doing later, you know. As
Yeah.
miners, they take from the earth and they provide something useful or ornamental for people. But then as craftsmen and as guards, they, truly serve the making and guarding things for people.
Mm. Yeah. I also noticed how like it seems like the family was kind of breaking down too with like the kingdom, but then they come back. Snow White was like the bait, like husband and like a child, so it's kind of like a family coming back in or something.
That's right. And
Yeah,
their own family, but also the family of the whole country.
yeah,
Everybody rejoices and they're connected to them and
yeah.
they're serving them too, and including the dwarves. So yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, first the queen dies and then the king remarries this sort of lifeless lady and this lifeless face and then he dies. Yeah. And then the family of the whole kingdom is yeah, has no life to it. They're all just watching out for
mm,
themselves, parasites, competitive.
mm. Yeah, and then like you said, Snow White kind of changing that way of life for the dwarves. So like kind of maybe just more family building there as well.
Yeah, yeah, being more
Yeah.
responsible, having shame,
Mm,
yeah, having pride. Well, yeah, yeah, more and more fascinating things about this story. Maybe we'll kind of touch on them a little bit later, like the 40 days and the parallels with the Garden of Eden story and the the start of the Trojan War with the apple of the Hesperides and things. Okay. Anything else you want to bring up?
Not much. Yeah, I just really like this version of the story.
Yeah,
And
yeah, me too.
yeah, and too bad the new Cinderella movie. I mean, not the new Snow White movie doesn't seem to be like it.
Yeah, might be a little bit more, yeah, politically kind of motivated or
Yeah.
modern or something. But yeah,
Mhm.
maybe it won't. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, um, okay. So be impeccable with your word until next week.
Yep,
Okay. Well, thank you for talking with me and talk to you again soon.
sounds good.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.